Today on Back and Brew, we are bringing on one of my favorite companies, Zavation's CEO, Derek Kuyper. Can't wait for you to see this episode. This is Back and Brew. Thanks for coming out, dude. I appreciate it. I've been a little while.
Yeah.
Man, it's been awesome being able to get to know you and work a lot with Zavation. Yeah, man. You guys, I got to say, and like we'll get into the drink in a second. Going through the facility, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is one of the coolest, most unique things is going through Zavation's actual facility. We'll get into that later, but first, this is Back and Brew. So we're going to talk about the brew that you brought. Derek, what did you bring here?
So I brought a Balcones, which is a Spanish pronunciation, but it's actually from Waco, Texas, and it was the first bourbon distillery in Waco. And there's some parallels here between myself starting in the industry and when Zavation started, when Corn Lake started, when Choice Spine started. So now we're operating as three companies, but they started in 2008 out of a garage, and it was guys out of Waco. They had to make a lot of their own equipment early on because nobody took serious there'd be a single pot distillery bourbon in Texas. So they were kind of innovators. They were very disruptive forces in the world of bourbon. They created, I think it was called Baby Blue, was a corn-based bourbon. And they really kind of like thought about, look, we don't need to make Kentucky bourbon. We're never going to. But we can make Texas bourbon. And Texas has unique things, like Waco has huge fluctuations in temperature. So the wood is constantly expanding, contracting. It's going to age a lot faster, but also harsher. So you're going to get more complex taste profiles earlier on. So they had to kind of master that. And then all of a sudden, they started winning blind taste tests and bourbon competitions over the single pot distilleries from Kentucky. So it's kind of a parallel where, in Spine, everybody thinks the big companies, they've done everything right. We got to copy what they do. It's like, no, we got to be disruptive. Zavation needs to do what only Zavation can do with our history for our customers. So it had parallels that attracted to me when I was looking through the store. What should I bring for this podcast?
So that story alone makes me excited to taste this. If it's compared to Zavation. Two, the smell on this is amazing. Like it smells like chocolate covered cherries is what I got out of it right when we opened it, which is, I don't think I've ever smelled a bourbon like this. Oh, and it kind of makes sense, I guess, because it's a rum cask finish. But man, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, the sweetness. I've not had the rum cask finish. This was a special occasion for the podcast.
All right. Well, cheers. Thanks for bringing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's really good.
Oh,
that's rich.
That is rich. That has a very smooth texture, though. It kind of reminds me of Pappy. That's
I could absolutely get that. Yeah. Have you ever had the Basil Hayden rum cask one? It's I think it comes in blue. It's the blue one.
I have not.
This is a better version of that.
Yeah.
This is really good.
It has that unique kind of velvet smoothness profile to it.
Yeah. Like it's like kind of coats your mouth, is like warm. It's really good. It's like this is a good, like, absolutely winter drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sponsorship, Balcones.
Right. We haven't gotten that yet. That's the funny thing, is like we have all these different, maybe it's because we have like competing ones on, maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't think maybe that's what's going to throw off the flow of that.
So technically, like, everything's distilled as a brew. So
that's fair.
Like when you hear it, you kind of think beer. But you're like, no, it's a brewing process to actually get the hops and
we've had
barley
root beer.
Wheat. Yeah.
We've had root beer on, so let's
Yeah.
I can't be too literal about it. Yeah. So tell me a little bit. Like, we obviously know each other because I started using some Zavation.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed going out there, being able to go. I'll say the most unique thing outside of your guys' technology and honestly the reproducibility of quality that I've seen in all of your stuff, it really is unparalleled. And again, this is me coming from Nuvasive, ATEC, some of the bigger ones. You guys really do a great job of manufacturing. And that's what was so cool about going through your tour, was that I actually got to go. It wasn't like, going through a lot of other spine companies. You go through and they're like, here's our state-of-the-art gym, here's our amphitheater, here's our bar. And like, Your guys' is straight down to business, and I absolutely loved it. First off, we went through with Brett, brilliant guy, your VP of marketing,
VP marketing, yeah.
and he's an engineer, which is
Engineer, yeah.
even cooler, is that he walks us through a manufacturing facility and he's talking about the Swiss machines that make all this stuff and like the intricacies of it and all these details that really I think speaks a language that's more closely to what spine surgeons look for than this is where we get drinks at the end of the day. This is our volleyball pit. This is our amphitheater. Like none of that stuff matters. I remember being a rep at Zavation and going through all that, and I'm like, okay, my commission just got cut, and we're taking doctors whose reimbursement's getting cut through a facility that they kind of are building, and there's a lot of waste in here.
Yeah,
more waste than innovation, I would say. And it definitely was not that way. Everything we talked about and everything they went through at Zavation was top notch. This is why we do what we do. It was intentional. It was very calculated, and it was functional.
That means a lot to hear that from a successful entrepreneur like yourself. Yeah, no, Brett Smith has been an amazing asset to the organization. A lot of our marketing team started off as engineers. One thing I'm really passionate about is that we take part in something really significant, being a vendor in spine. We recently just had town halls, and we had spine surgeons come in and deliver speeches and presentations on, their patients, their practices, why they got into it. But really, the message being, look, the things that the surgeon does in the operating room, they start long before, right? So if an operator misses something when they're doing a machine run and it passes off to someone else and they miss a quality check, that's going to result in a patient having a bad outcome. So a lot of our surgeons that we work with, we show them the manufacturing facility and they see the care that we have for it and that we all really kind of understand it. We become experts on the supply chain function of operating in spine. And, I want the employees from every level of the organization to really feel like you're a part of that surgeon's team. You don't play the same role that the distributor that's in the case with them, that their PA plays. But we're all a part of having successful spine surgeries. This is still a surgery that overall has a lot of complications. Like it's great, it can transform lives, but these are really, really significant events for people's family members. And we have to care, and we should understand the significance that each person in this organization has in terms of that ability for a surgeon to really change someone's life. So it's something that we take tremendous pride in, and that we continue to build and invest in. So we're going to do this every quarter. We're going to have surgeons come in and speak to the manufacturing floor and explain to them, that thank them for their work as we thank the surgeon for the business that they give us. We're really trying to drive that home that this isn't, just some manufacturing facility. This is something that takes place in a broader ecosystem of really wanting to help people.
It was interesting. I think when I was going through one of the times, one of the guys that was working on the manufacturing floor, he's like, this isn't just a screw. This is a case that hasn't happened yet to a patient that doesn't know it yet. And I'm like,
sounds like Alan. Yeah.
I was like, that is terrifying because maybe I have a surgery coming up that I don't know about. But yeah. So how did Zavation get from the garage to the facility that I went through just a couple months ago?
Yeah, so that's a long story. So Zavation goes back to, and I'm going to say 2009, and I might get it wrong. May have been 2008, but the original founder was Jeffrey Johnson. So he was a distributor, which I think is kind of unique. I think we're one of the only companies that's kind of unabashedly like we're focused on distributors. We want to grow distributors. We're not going to grow business structures that separate us from them. We want to be the best partner for distributors providing spinal care solutions. And that means respecting what they do and treating them right. So that really set the foundation of something that has been said before, but probably really hasn't been followed. Not as companies get larger and larger, they start to kind of forget about the importance of the distributor in that continuum of the care. You always have to be surgeon driven, but he had that from the onset. So he started that company. I think they had a cervical plate. It's the classic cervical plate we sell today. It's a great plate. It's been a kind of benchmark of the company, and invested early on in internal manufacturing, which at that time, I was already left Alphatech, but Alphatech, around the same time that he was investing in it, was slowing off their manufacturing capacity, and I thought that was a huge mistake. They bought a company called PanMed. I want to say that was in 2019. I'm going to get some of this wrong. But it was one of the first acquisitions that Zavation had made. That was a kyphoplasty company. A lot of the existent management team right now saw how, acquisitions are great, but I don't think you ever really recognize how much work goes into them. Bringing together different systems, different philosophies, different people. So they ended up buying CoreLink, which is actually where I came from originally, and I started around the same time. I started in 2011 at CoreLink. Before that, I was at Alphatech Spine. CoreLink was a different history. So CoreLink really had roots back into the late 50s in manufacturing. It was two Germans from Tuttlingen, Germany, where still like 60% of the world's surgical instruments are manufactured. So they took a job with stores. They basically worked off their debt from stores in the St. Louis area, and then they started a manufacturing facility, I think like out of their basement. And they started manufacturing ophthalmic surgical instruments by hand from stainless steel blanks. And they grew that company. They worked with, I think it was a company called Catino that was later acquired by Integra Life Sciences. But hand craftsmanship, Kurt actually had a fellowship program over 7 years, ironically, of how to teach someone to be a master craftsman, which is the same length of a fellowship in neurosurgery, ironically. So I love telling that part of the story when we're walking neurosurgeons around the facility. But, really unique American manufacturing, handmade, surgical instruments with a dramatic precision to care. You didn't actually pass the good parts from bad parts based on comparison to a print with like a microscope. You actually had to have a master hold it and feel it. It had to be able to scratch a fingernail with a cutting surface. So really kind of unique background. In 2001, Jay Bartling, who started CoreLink, bought that company. And he always wanted to be an entrepreneur. He saw an opportunity in a metal making shop, all everything was by hand, of what was going on in spine. So at the time, it was the Danik Panic, the cage rage. So Capstone, I think it was Capstone, had just been released.
The T-lift cage.
Yeah.
Right?
And Medtronic's just signing up contract manufacturing companies like Sight Unseen. So he, I believe he went to, it's a big manufacturing conference in Chicago every year, IMST, I think. And he had gotten an order from Danik for Capstone trials, but he didn't have a CNC machine to make it on. So he goes to Chicago and brings a print with him basically and says, hey, I got this order to, I think it was either Sugami, maybe it was Haas. It was for a Swiss CNC machine. And they're like, yeah, this machine can make this. I'm like, well, okay, how much is it? I'm like, no, it's $300,000. All right, I'm going to write you a check right now, but I need you to deliver this to my facility in a week and teach me how to make this part. And that's how CoreLink, through a different company, got started in contract manufacturing. So, two, hardcore entrepreneurs that took tremendous risk to get into the crazy business of spine. And one from the distributor side, and then one really from, principled contract manufacturing side. Jay had originally worked at Escalab, so it was really a neurosurgical instrument company at that time. It wasn't in spine yet domestically.
So were they able to get, to be like, hey, I want this machine in a week or 2 weeks? It seems like the lead time would be way longer.
He bought the model right off the floor. So
okay, that makes sense. Because I'm sure they'd be like, oh, it's going to be 4 weeks out, 8 weeks out.
Yeah, no, lead times for manufacturing machines, they can span out. It kind of depends what's happening. Right now, there's probably longer lead times than have been historically the case over the past several years. But anyways, so, CoreLink started, we got into our own branded spine line. Originally, we contracted for a lot of different spine companies. I joined in 2011, and we grew that company, and it was a great ride. And then Zavation ended up with Gemspring Capital purchasing us in June of 23. So that was the kind of second big acquisition for Zavation, and then that brought together, two really kind of interesting companies. One that was really well known for being customer service centric and with distributors specifically. CoreLink was too, but it was a different kind of go-to-market strategy. But we had the, manufacturing long-term history. So Zavation was making their own implants at the time. We were making our own instruments and implants. So it was really a beautiful combination of two different go-to-market philosophies that, like at the time, I felt like, man, if we could take the parts that work well about both of these companies, and we can get people to really buy in to what this can become, it's going to be something really special. And then, integrations happen, and there was a lot of hard times and a lot of good times, and we got to a point, about last year where things were going really well. We started growing really quickly. The second half of last year, I think, was, on a nominal basis, the strongest growth the company's ever had. On a percentage base, probably one of the strongest the company's ever had. Um, and, then we ended up buying Choice Spine a few months ago, which is another opportunity where, it just is great because Choice has an incredible culture. They're very surgeon focused. They were really well known for, having customer intimacy with their distributors, really knowing their business and supporting them. But they didn't manufacture any of their products. So that was a huge synergy. So when we look at these kind of roll ups, we're always looking for more. It's does this play a part in our story of what we want to become, the most preferred partner for distributors providing spinal care solutions? And Choice was kind of an obvious fit. And then, another thing that we rolled forward with is if you look at Zavation today, it really is a combination of the people from CoreLink and Zavation and a combination of the philosophies that kind of merged into the one. And it took a while, but it was the best, I think, of what both companies offered to the market. And I think a lot of the distributors that we work with and surgeons that we work with now would say that 3 years after the fact and say, like, yeah, it's not the same that it was previous 3 years ago, but I think it's starting to get better. So Choice is that opportunity where I just think we can, bring into our manufacturing platform their products. We operate differently. We're very operationally lean, like you said. We want to do what we can to generate free cash flow, which is one of the hardest things to do in the spine business. But to me, it's like cash flow is oxygen. It gives you the freedom to not have to think about financing, but the freedom to say, no, we're going to innovate with surgeons, not to surgeons. And we're going to pick very specific markets to get into, specific technologies. We're going to be really good to our distributors. We want to be the easiest company to work with for distributors. So we're going to invest in that. And we're going to get to a state where we're operating to a point where we're creating enough cash flow to fund our future organic R&D development and to just keep that rolling like a train. And that'll give us, a really unique story. There's only been like one company. Globus has kind of done this. It's the only company in spine that I'm aware of in recent memory.
It's so funny
that does that.
I came from a lunch with another surgeon, and he had said the same thing. He's like, because I brought up, I was like, yeah. He's like, what do you use for posterior fixation? I was like, we have a bunch of stuff, but I was like, honestly, for like a lot of these deformities, we'll use Zavation. And he goes, I've heard about them, but I've never seen it. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And I asked him like, well, what do you normally use? And I go, what have you been to, like, where have you gone to a manufacturing facility or to a headquarters that you walked away from that? And you're like, oh, that was different. And he goes, Globus. And I go, why? And he goes, because they took me through the manufacturing in Audubon. And I'm like, all right, I got something to show you.
Yeah.
And it is so refreshing to go through that story of Zavation. Even the fact that at one point when we're there, they take you over in this big sterile manufacturing facility to this wooden desk that looks old and kind of like it's been weathered, and that's where it kind of started. And they're like, oh, this is the desk that the founder shipped all of his stuff over in from Germany.
Yeah.
And it still had the little like the measuring templates of, this is a set of tweezers that is going to be the spec. This is going to be the standard. And it had a bunch of those drawers, and I was like, that is really cool that they still have that. And it really is. Anytime there's ever been anything where I'm like, hey, this instrument could have some tweaking here or there, you guys are on it. Like, you move quickly. By far, one of the most distributor-friendly companies we work with, and like, absolutely couldn't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, I mean, more good stuff there. I mean, we've got a lot of strategic initiatives to get better at that. Um, so I'm really glad to hear you saying that. I think one of the things of really judging yourself to how can you be the best, maybe not the best metric because there is no best. Like you can always be better if you're measuring against yourself. Once you can get like objective data, like, oh no, our distributors like us more than other companies. Well, that's still not good enough. You still have to think of ways of, no, no, I think we can still do better.
The process is key. The process is completely key because even like there are some good companies that have good stuff, but their process is such a mess to get instruments and inventory is such a pain
Yeah.
that it's not reproducible or scalable. So we can't. This is not uh, viable from our process standpoint, and two, I actually think it's somewhat unsafe to a patient. The idea of shipping in sets via courier the day of a case and then expecting to ship them out that same day. Like, what if they bring a patient back and you don't have the stuff there, right?
No.
I've never had that issue. Like,
Yeah.
Zavation has never asked or questioned that.
It's a balance. I mean, we're trying to get to a point where we can still be the best for the distributor and for the surgeon, for the health system, but still be operationally efficient. So it's a matter of what you're going to tighten up and what you want to make sure you continue the experience of something like that for. One of the things I like to say when it comes to our distributor partners, I don't think people realize this. Distributors in spine are all entrepreneurs, and they live in an incredibly demanding environment, particularly when they get started. So like you may have like your first surgeon, and if you lose that surgeon, like you don't have a business anymore, right? You have one customer, and then two, and then three, and then some distributors scale that out and get many, but it's still so highly a risk concentrated business, and in that business, you get zero room for mistakes. Like you cannot walk into that operating room and not have the right equipment. That could be the end of your business or a 20% cut in the reduction, even if you're a big distributor of your revenues. So distributors are asked a lot of their surgeons, and I think that as a company that really values the distributor relationship, we need to be what you are to surgeons to you, so that you get people on the phone, so that we never let you down. So we take that very seriously. It doesn't mean we get it right 100% of the time, and it gets harder as you scale to bigger and bigger revenue numbers. But I'm constantly looking for ways, process wise, within this company to be both operationally efficient, but also give the best customer experience.
Well, and we'd certainly feel that from the distributor side. Like, I can tell you, agnostically, we feel that. Why not go down the road of W-2 Salesforce? So many companies do it. They start out distributor. You look at ATEC, who is, oh no, we're all distributor. Actually, we're a distributor that are exclusive. So you can be a distributor, but you can't carry anything else. You're basically W-2 at that point.
Yeah.
Why not go down the W-2 or exclusive distributor route?
I think exclusive relationships can work in some ways, and I'm not going to say that we would never want to do that. I think it's got to be, we've got to be the right partner for that distributor, and the distributor's got to be the right partner for us. I think it'd be a mistake to ever say that you 100% can't carry any other spine product, because it's as much interest to me to make sure that we have as much of the wallet share in that room for those procedures as possible. There's just protection there. But it's incredibly expensive to scale that out. You also, on a practical standpoint, you have to have the product line that supports the vast majority of procedures for a surgeon in order to really make that make sense for a distributor to do. Because as a distributor, your goal is to get 100% of the procedures done by that surgeon. And if you are limited in your choice of company that you can work with in order to do that, that's a relative disadvantage to you. So I don't want to disadvantage our distributors. I'd rather do what we do really well. So you want to work with us because you have the best experience. So I think there's some economic realities. I would say that there's also truth. We would like to have more proactive and planned communication with distributors. I think that's part of spine companies getting up. That doesn't mean anything to do with having exclusivity. It means allowing the transfer of information between the distributor and the company that's convenient and gives both what they need to be better at their jobs and having a common understanding that you want to succeed together. So to be fair, maybe part of the answer is we haven't had the product portfolio. We're quickly getting there. I want distributors to know you don't need to have the anchor company be one of the top 4 companies. Like, we have enabling technology partnerships. We can help connect you with neuromonitoring companies. Artificial discs, there are options for you to go out and do. You may have to subcontract them, but there's options. So you can still be a full line spine distributor and still, push Zavation 95% of the time. But to what you said, like, we don't do a lot of marketing. That's not a mistake. That's like something we intentionally don't do it because generally our distributors tell other distributors to work with us or to seek us out, and that's how we've been growing. So we haven't really had to. So in that decision of how do we get to controlling our own destiny and being really operationally capable and generating free cash flow to reinvest back into ourselves, there's trade-offs you have to make. And that's one that generally we've made. We're now getting to a size where it's becoming a little bit easier to do, a little bit more outbound communication. So you'll see some of that. But in general, it's really that focus on just that relationship and, really people, you don't have to sell as hard if people really like working with you and tell people because they like working with you so much that they should work with us. So that helps create some stickiness too in terms of getting long-term customer retention.
Absolutely. It's funny. I've even had like, I've had other distributors in the market that are technically my competitors. I feel like as a distributor, you don't really see them as competitors.
Yeah.
Like you're kind of like, well, we'll trade off here and there for things, whatever. But I've even told them they'd be frustrated about being able to get something from some company. I'm like, man, I'm telling you, you're sleeping on Zavation. Like they have a lot of everything you need. You guys have the most complete portfolio that I've probably ever seen. Everything from kyphoplasty to expandable corpectomy to MIS screws, open screws, you have 2 or 3 different types of posterior cervical systems, 3D printed titanium, tie-coated PEEK, nanometalline. It was really impressive.
We have nanoprime.
Nanoprime.
Yeah.
All right,
we
nanoprime.
have porous PEEK with a nano surface featured titanium coating.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting technology. So yeah, we're about to release the lateral version of that. So it'll be the first porous PEEK titanium coated cage with this kind of unique coating, different than nanometalline, but very similar in characteristics. So we're very excited about that. The cervical has been a huge hit, but on interbody technologies, we definitely have the broadest material offering with a lot of really strong science. So I can't think of many situations where a distributor wouldn't have, the best material for the preferences of a specific surgeon.
What are you most excited about? So you talked about the porous PEEK, tie-coated porous PEEK, lateral cage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what else are you guys excited about that you're going into? I saw that you had a partnership with Cibion, right?
Yeah, Cibion. Metadynamic is the parent company. Cibion is the navigation platform. We're definitely excited about that. We've got software integration work going on right now where you're going to have Zavation instrumentation native on their user interface. So yeah, we're gaining traction with that. We do labs in St. Louis and show surgeons that there's more economical but as capable navigation platforms out there. So we're very excited about that. I don't know. I think what I'm most excited about is the opportunity to see all the good things that are going to come out of this next integration. So, a lot of the people at Choice Spine, such great people. And when you bring 2 companies together, when you don't try to force, the company that's acquired into what you think you are, like companies' cultures exist no matter what you try to do. You have to be really open to and not have a sense of organizational ego to it to get the full extent of the benefits. So I'm enjoying seeing even simple things of inventory management systems, of different ways they did, ticket systems in terms of customer communication that I think that we could adopt that are better. And then of more deep things of, really just philosophies in terms of what they think is really important in terms of, their relationship with their customers and their distributors, the events they did. So what I enjoy and what I'm most excited about isn't a product or a service offering. It's the chance to take the best of what Choice Spine was doing and to incorporate that into what the best of Zavation is doing. And if we can do that really well, then together It's not going to be a 1+1=2. It's going to be like 1+1=4.
Uh, It's a really good way to put it. It's interesting I remember going to Choice Spine 5 years ago. I flew out there to just go look at, I think their lateral system, their Veo, right? And I was like, it looks weird. I want to see it. And what struck me the most when I walked away from there, what stuck with me was, yes, they had some pretty cool products. I think their laminoplasty is fantastic.
Yeah.
They have a couple other really cool things that are innovative. But when I walked away from was, I knew the name of the customer service person that I could call or text if I needed something right away, and I knew that they would respond. And I was like, there's no way that a large, $100+ million company is going to be able to do this. And then we started working with Zavation. And that was, so the pairing of the two, I totally could see that.
Yeah.
The other thing that was really weird, and for me, it was like, oh, this is almost like kind of weird in the way that, if you talk about something or like a product or something, and then you go onto your Facebook and you start seeing that product, you're like, oh, that's kind of weird but creepy. Was I remember at Choice Spine they had a Monday morning huddle, and they would highlight the individual distributors. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, they could say my name, and I had no idea that these people knew what my name was.
Mm-hmm.
And like they made it personal. Like looking back, I'm like, yeah, I remember when I was back there, I was like, that was weird. But looking back, I'm like, no, they actually owned the surgery. They owned that distributor's business even for a second. They were actively cheering them on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool to see.
Yeah.
Like it was really cool to see. So when I heard, Zavation's acquiring Choice Spine, it totally made sense. And I could totally see how those cultures could really mix well and really kind of synchronize to push spine forward in general.
Yeah. No, that's I'm missing a meeting right now, but we formed you always do like integration committees when you bring two companies together. But we prioritized a culture organizational committee. So really thinking about what we do to contribute towards positive, beneficial culture in terms of Zavation and what Choice Spine was doing. And putting those two together is one of the work streams and groups of people that we have cross-functionally working together to try to get to that point. But.
Is the balance tough sometimes of like, so like you want to have all these like the idea of like a cultural committee almost like, right? Mm. But at the same time, I love Zavation because they run so lean. Yeah. Like figuring out that balance has to be tough.
Yeah, it's communication. I mean, we have town halls every single quarter. We get the employees together. I'll spend time with each department personally, generally without their direct supervisors, so they can ask me questions based upon what we're communicating. So, is the spend metric per employee on every single item going to be the same? No, not between the two companies. Probably not. Now, is the intent the same, and can we be more creative with the dollars that we have in order to get the same effect? Let's say 100% yes, 100%. So again, it's all about the trade-offs and what we choose to be creative and spend our time problem solving and where we're going to allocate that money that's the most strategic and allows us to be a disruptor, like the whiskey over here. They were.
Why do they call it disruptive? Like that is the weirdest thing. It's like if I think of disruptive, I'm like, I'm going to be disruptive in spine surgery. It's me going right across the sterile field and sticking my finger in the wound.
Yeah.
Disruptive.
But I think technically, like from an academic sense, disruptor is generally someone that changes the economic framework of the market that they play in. So it'd be like Amazon had a disruptive, play into the way people sold books. They sold them for much cheaper, right, but a much greater scale. So maybe it's a flippant use of the term, but I mean to be not, to not want to have the same playbook that other spine companies have used to become successful, to be brave enough to say, we're not going to have sophomore Danik's story. We're not going to have Globus' story. We have a lot of the same core competencies, but rarely can you repeat a strategy that's been done before. Everybody's already trying to do that. So, you can't repeat what Globus did over the past, 20 years now. That's been incredible. We've got to do it our own way. So we've got, some core tenets of how we operate. And then, we've defined kind of a new strategic roadmap and what we're doing in terms of how the sales organization operates and what technologies we're going to be developing next and what partnerships we're going to be bringing on and what we value. So that's what I mean kind of by the term. Or it's just saying, know what we're good at, know what we're not good at, know who we want to sell to and know that we want to be the best to them. And then let's put that all together and go after it.
It is kind of interesting to watch so many companies try to do the mimicry of what worked maybe 20 years ago, or maybe didn't even work well,
Yeah.
but was what was done 20 years ago, and trying to do the same thing, hoping for a better outcome.
Right.
And then they end up in a ton of debt, and it's beyond me why they try to run the same play that didn't work.
Yeah, no, you can see a lot of companies' kind of core statements, and it's like all innovation or based off of what was it? The
Speed of innovation. Yeah.
What Nuvasiv had many years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting watching. It was very predictive for me being a Nuvasiv rep and then working with ATEC and seeing ATEC try to pull the same culture, the same spending. And I remember at one point, I saw what they were coming out with and what they were doing. And I counted the levels of middle management above me. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be good the way this is going to go. I don't understand how the profitability will ever be there. And I'm sure there's people much smarter than me running those, but I think the market shows that sometimes, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and credit to a lot of those companies. I mean, what Nuvasiv did was incredible. I think each company that had a really big growth wave did at least one or two things really well. So we want to try to be as operationally, we want to be the best operating company in spine, have really good financial metrics, but still be preferred for our distributors and to innovate on products. And just surgeons feel like they're experiencing innovation that they believe in, that they're, contributing to it. Not that we're just doing things to push it down and try to, increase the spend of our enabling tech platform and things like that, which I think maybe a mistake that's happening elsewhere in the space. But, it's a big adventure, and we're going after it as hard as we can. It's a lot of fun, but there's a lot of missed sleep, a lot of airplane rides and all that. But we're having a good time.
It is really cool to see that. The fact that I remember even when I first became a distributor and going around to certain companies that were kind of still running that same playbook of spend now, ask later, right? And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is the same energy that earlier Nuvasiv had. And I was hoping there wasn't going to be the same outcome that happened with Nuvasiv, right? I mean, really, Globus taking over Nuvasiv, it wasn't an acquisition. It was all I think it was all stock, right? So it wasn't. It was kind of them.
I don't know the details of the deal, but I don't think it was what people anticipated.
There's,
you can see the writing on the wall. You can look at all the companies that did massive, big buys, big acquisitions from 2015 into 2020. Zimmer got spun out into a private equity, player. Stryker Spine did into VB Spine. There's been I'd say a macro change in terms of just the way that a lot of equity markets work. And it's back in the day, you could have a high growth company and people would pay you a multiple on your revenue growth. And then it kind of transferred to EBITDA. And then I don't know the exact reason. I think one of the reasons is just what's happened in the tech space, where you have these software companies and AI companies are it's going to be a little bit of a different dynamic because they don't have as low variable cost. Or at least not yet. They may in the future. But all of a sudden, you had these companies that would develop products and they would scale really quickly, and the variable cost was essentially zero. And then they were just making cash hand over fist, and then they did their own acquisitions, and they grew, into these unicorn companies really, really quickly. So I think where we are right now, Spine has missed the boat in free cash flow generation. So that's one of the big focus points for me, is focusing more on kind of like it's not an old school mentality, but more from the tech playbook of like the value of our company is the net present value of our future generated cash flows. I think Peter Thiel said that in his book. I forget the title, but I think that's true. It's going to take a different way of doing business in spine in order to really do that well, for mid-tier companies particularly. So we're committed on that train, and that's going to give us freedom, and then that'll allow us, our independence and the ability to keep doing what we're doing, to being good partners for our surgeons and distributors.
It's really interesting too, because like I noticed also when we were out there, every project that you showed that was coming out was really surgeon driven. You worked very closely with the surgeons on it, whereas in some of the past companies that I was with, it was very much, hey, an engineer came up with this idea, let's shoehorn a surgeon into it.
No.
And it was very different there. That when we were sitting in the room where we had like the big presentation and everything, there was a surgeon sitting there explaining how he was excited about something that was coming out. And it was a legitimate excitement. It wasn't him saying like, oh, I can't remember the name of this thing, but I'm excited for it to get to market, you know?
Well, I've learned from past mistakes on that, but yeah, it's important to have surgeons guiding your product management team and your engineers through every step of the process. So that's always been true. And the minute you try and fancy foot around it, you release products that, you know, may seem exciting, but don't actually work well in the operating room, and not a good place to be.
Here's a question. So some of the best ideas and some of the worst ideas I've heard come from surgeons. How do you like curtail the awful ideas?
I want to make it very apparent I've never heard a bad idea from surgeons.
How do you redirect the bad ideas from surgeons to good ideas, or to be like, you know, what might work better is this?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think a lot of times it's the fact that, you know, unfortunately we live in a world where payment is an incredibly important part of products that are successful or not successful. So there's like economic realities to ideas that oftentimes are fundamentally good, but people won't shift their behavior to do something differently without a huge amount of investment. And like that's where, like as Zavation, it's like, look, we're not going to spend, you know, $20 million into making a new market and to proving out that this product should be paid for underneath a new DRG. Like that's a VC play, and I'll help you, you know, get into contact with people that do that for a living. So I think like whenever you need to say to someone something they don't like, or something that you fear they're not going to like, or to say no, or to say that this isn't a good fit for our company, the most important thing is like taking the time to really think about it and then explain the why of like, look, this doesn't fit for us. Or in some cases, yeah, it could be like, look, I don't think this is going to be a great device for these reasons. And that would generally be more like engineering principles of like, you know, that's not enough surface area in this dimension in order to get that level of expansion. You're going to have to pass, you know, 2077 testing. It's never going to work. But I think generally when you really spend time and give people time to explain the why, then generally those explanations go pretty well. People are normally pretty reasonable in every walk of life. You just have to maybe spend a little bit more time with that explanation.
It's interesting because I legitimately have worked with companies that have said, well, we don't have any active projects, but don't tell them no yet.
No.
Right?
Yeah. You know, another interesting thing, this is like such a fascinating business. So there's only like 5,500 board certified U.S. spine surgeons between neurosurgeons and orthopedic spine surgeons. So this is like an incredibly small environment. And there's only a certain amount that graduate every year, and it only grows by a certain percentage. So you cannot have a long-term career in this industry and make a bad name for yourself, or to break commitments. That's something that, you know, I won't say where I learned it from, but I learned it early on, and I remember it. It's very different. If you own a car dealership in Los Angeles, there's a lot of people. You can probably break a few commitments here and there. In spine surgery, that's not going to work. So it's easier to say no early on than string along people and then say no later on and to break commitments. So we're very, very careful about what we say we can do and what we will do. And again, another thing that gets difficult with scale. So we've got to start thinking about those things early and often, and putting in the right process to avoid things like that.
Do you see a change in strategy with the kind of consolidation of spine surgeons? So, and what I mean by consolidation is, you know, 10 years ago, 80% of spine surgeons were private practice, 20% were employed, and now it's flopped to where 80% are employed, 20% are private practice.
Yeah, I think those are mostly neurosurgeon statistics. Are you saying spine surgeons? I don't think it's quite as concentrated on spine surgeons.
That's fair, overall, because ortho would still get their
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think they're when it comes down to it, you have to have good product. You have to be a little bit ahead of the curve and have things that are going to provide meaningful patient differences or user experience or speed experiences that are better for the surgeons. Certainly, our ability to work collaboratively with health systems that are consolidating, being more powerful. What we have is the vertical integration. So we really can be partners with health systems and explain cost structures and what we can do and what we can't do. That's part of that why. So we don't want to be combative to that. I think that's probably one of the changes that's kind of occurred in that space. But we also still want to get good value for where we have incremental differentiation in clinical data. There's like this real popular standpoint that's like, oh, a pedicle screw is a pedicle screw. I'm like, well, okay. I mean, that's not even true when you test them mechanically. So like if you take the screws that everybody uses as their predicates and then you put those through 1717 testing, there's statistical differences between how stable they are in range of motion. Now, the 510K process is the 510K process. That doesn't mean a screw is a screw, not in its performance on a patient, and certainly not in its performance in challenging scenarios where you're doing complex reduction or correction maneuvers. And then, the time between a system that's reliable or a system that's not reliable. Well, like, how do you put a value to that? We're doing complex revisions on obese patients with diabetes. That's off-label. That's the surgeon's choice in which to operate on. But you can't tell me that having a more reliable instrumentation set for doing rod reduction in a complex revision has no value over another pedicle screw because a pedicle screw is a pedicle screw. So there's been like this kind of common theme of like all these products are commoditized. And I don't think it is. I don't think the products are commoditized until we have the same outcomes in terms of people getting back to work and successful surgeries as we have in total joints. And that may be an impossible thing to do, but it still means that there's room for innovation. So I don't think it's really changed in terms of how we interact with physicians. I think it's probably changed in how we interact with the institutional buyers, the large IDNs, ASC groups. And I do see a wave, with AI and with a more educated population base that's starting to enter the age of spine surgery, where they're doing more research on the spine surgeon themselves. They're doing more research on the procedure that they're going to get, and they're probably going to start researching more on the company that's going to be putting the product into them. The generation above the baby boomers always trusted the doctor. The baby boomers don't really have that. We went through COVID, right? People don't have the same level of faith and trust in doctors as they did previous to that. So I think when that starts coming, the brands that surgeons build for themselves and their communities and nationally, and the spine surgeon groups that are still independent and large and are starting to have more sophisticated relationships with the insurance providers, I think there's going to be a swing back to where physicians are much more interested in staying some level of independent from hospitals. We'll see if that comes true, but ultimately the patients get to choose where the patients get to go at least in the private pay markets. I think people in general are going to start expecting to get more information, and they're going to have more of a say in terms of where they get spine surgery. And that's going to drive different behavior through competitions with the spine surgeons themselves. I think that's one of the best things that you're doing in terms of the stuff you do and the marketing side of knowing, I don't know if you agree with me on that or not, but that's the way that I feel about it. So we're actually going to get a wave back, I think, to more private, at least private behavior and the importance of surgeons branding themselves, what they do, and, why they're the best for a specific procedure for a specific person.
I absolutely agree. I think although more and more surgeons will be bought up by hospital groups, I think the ones that stick it out and stay private will be able to be pickier and pickier about their patient population, probably, as long as they're intentional about their messaging and how they get it out.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see how the implant companies will, and I don't know the answer, how they'll figure out how to partner with those surgeons and supporting those efforts. Because that's kind of the key is like, again, it's cups and water. Like for so long, there were, if patients were water and the manufacturers and spine companies were cups, and for the surgeon to drink the water, they had to put the water into a cup. There were only 4 cups for so long, and there was a lot of water.
Yeah.
And now there are hundreds of cups, and there are a lot more surgeons, and they're fighting over this specific amount of water. And so it's, how do you differentiate yourself to where you can support them in a way that's not just a cup? And
I agree. I mean, that's been a very difficult thing for spinal hardware companies to do. Medtronic, I think when they were still sophomore organic, before Medtronic, tried that with like what was it called, the X Stop?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a lot of patient marketing, and it ended up, I think, like
They got sued, right?
I think they may have gotten sued. I don't think a lot of surgeons appreciated it, because they didn't want patients coming into the room and saying, like, well, I need a neck stop. I was like, no, you need a 1-level T-level decompression. Like, this not going to help you. Like, so, and we're limited in terms of what we can really do in terms of how we promote the company and its products. Right. So, that's going to be, I spent a lot of time thinking about that. I think, education via social network marketing or things that we could do on the technology front to help connect patients to patients and patients to go to educational resources is something that, in general, SI Bone's done a very good job of. And then again, though, it just goes back to, what are you going to spend your money on? So you gotta pick your places in the sand. I don't know that we have like that kind of product where it really makes sense to launch that. I'd be interested in an investment where that becomes, a vehicle of growth for us, though. I don't know how much of that's happening in endoscopic spine. That might be a space, but it's an interesting concept, and it's a great analogy. And I think it certainly is going to be a growing place. I'm not sure that the manufacturer of the implants is really the place where that's going to, be super significant in market share shift over the next few years.
It certainly is more complicated if you're the manufacturer. It's interesting because we do, monthly look backs, KPIs, key performance indicators with all of our clients that are marketing clients of ours. And we look at what videos, what content was the most engaged. And hands down, it's patient testimonials and second opinion videos saying, specifically around arthroplasty, if you've been indicated for fusion, you might be a candidate for motion preserving procedure. But by far, the patient testimonial of the 45-year-old mom who got a cervical disc replacement and is out golfing absolutely blows away anything else that we put out there.
Yeah.
And we really focus a lot on that. Obviously, the second opinion videos and some of the stuff we do with the surgeons, really big as well, because people will see that, then they'll go research the surgeon, they'll see a couple more videos, fill out a form, and then they're in the surgeon's office. But that's something that I always thought about is, there have been a fair amount of companies, like you said, to Medtronic's point, that have tried to market directly to the patients. The other limiting factor of that is, a lot of those big companies like a Medtronic wants every surgeon's business. How are you going to market your product in the hands of one surgeon and not the other across the street from them? Right? Really, just another hard thing to try to figure out. I don't have the answer for it.
No, I would say one thing, and this is the things that you can do with agent-based AI is pretty astronomical when it comes to marketing outreaches, marketing research. It's something that I spend a lot of time researching and thinking about how can we get operational leverage out of utilizing AI, not for the replacement of labor or what a lot of people think about. It's for scalability and better customer experience. But on the marketing front, there's definitely a lot of interesting things that are being done for small businesses to help create content and put it in, more visible places to drive inbound leads. So that'll be interesting of the companies that really try and platform that and make it super accessible. Whether that's going to happen or not, I don't know. These technology shifts everybody has always a big idea, and then it ends up changing the world in the way that you didn't expect, but we'll see.
I agree. It's funny because I'll tell people, I'm like, look, whenever a lot of the marketing people come, or when a lot of our customers come in and they're initially engaging with us around marketing campaigns, I have to reassure them that they're not buying, the nice cameras and all this and like the big production. The most valuable thing that we offer is the expertise based on the length that we've done this.
Mm, yeah.
Like, we know what scripts you need.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that really is the sauce of it. The other part of it is just doing it, just getting out there. Surgeons in general, they don't have the personality types of wanting to be the forefront or center of attention. They very much want to be humble. They are ready to fix someone, but they're not going to be the front of the class, really, And so to get them out of that shell has always been a hard thing. But the ones that do it and really make that leap and kind of get uncomfortable for a little while, they do really well. 3 years down the road, they're doing so much better.
Yeah, that can never be emulated. That knowledge of knowing how to bring that out. Yeah, but it's amazing to me though. It is such a for the actual transactional value of like patients into a practice, the unimportance of marketing spending, particularly from big hospital systems, that they put into the surgeons themselves has always been astounding to me and kind of interesting. It seems like an easy area, like put money and effort behind this. So it's something that I've admired in dark water consulting and something that I think you've done very, very well.
I appreciate it. It's really hard for us to work with hospital systems in general because usually we'll run into some VP of marketing, and the question that usually gets us pushed out the door is, all right, I understand what you've done and I've seen like your marketing efforts. Can you tie those back to patients that came in the door because of those efforts? Any metric is so taboo to talk about with hospital systems.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, people want to keep their jobs. And in general, marketing doesn't have solid metrics, but it could.
Yeah.
And this one could.
For clarity, this isn't the transactional value of more patients means patients that need to be operated on, but they're going to be operated on by somebody. Who should they be operated by? And there's reasons that good spine surgeons should get out there and market themselves so that they get, a bigger piece of that pie, and that benefits society too. So
it's interesting. Like, the busiest spine surgeons aren't always the best spine surgeons.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And that's what I always tell the guys that are coming out. So I don't know, but man, you've been in it so long, and I think how long have you been in spine?
It's been since 2009, so not as long as I think some people think, but a long time.
You're pretty observant, though. I got to say, like, in my course of working with, we carry 53 companies. I've met a lot of CEOs and C-suites. You are by far the most curious one. Like, you always ask the most questions, and I can tell are always trying to figure out, how do we do something better? What can I learn from this interaction? And I really appreciate that about you. That's legitimately like something that's really interesting.
Thank you.
But yeah, and you wear socks with shoes. I got to say, there are a lot of med device bros that roll in with the socks, no shoes, or the high tops with a blazer on, and I'm like, oh man, this guy couldn't cover a case.
Yeah. No, it's been a good ride. I started off covering cases, and I was always I'm by nature a curious person, but it's been a blessing to get to become a CEO here recently, and to really, I think one of the best things about the job is thinking about the people and the business, and how do we get everybody just to do each year just a little bit better for themselves personally, for their teammates. That'll translate, I think, oftentimes into for their families. So, there's amazing things that happen through the way that numbers work, like the way that things expand exponentially with little small but multiplied units, is a great thing about the world. So we just have to be a little bit better each day, a little bit better each month, and then over time we'll end up looking back and saying, look at all the great progress we've made. So I've always enjoyed it, working with you, getting to know you over the past few years.
It's been great, man.
I look forward to working and supporting you for many more years to come.
No, I appreciate it, man. What if you were to sum up to a distributor, why Zavation? What would you tell them?
That's a very good question. I would tell them that, there's companies that are going to care about you, but they may not be at a place right now where they can really give you a great product offering. And they're probably not going to be releasing products at a pace of which you need to in order to go out and get new customers. Zavation has, the interest of a lot of pure play enabling technology companies. We can do partnerships. We still have a robust pipeline. We're financially quite sound. We want to keep fighting this game, and we want to be, known as the company that is like, yeah, if you're a third party distributor, you got to work with Zavation. Like, you got to go out and find them. So, and in doing that, I would say you have a CEO that says, look, I know your life. Like, I was a rep. I worked with distributors for most of my adult life. You're an incredible entrepreneur. You take on tremendous risk. You should work with a company that is going to treat you how you need to treat your surgeons and your customers. So that's what we need to be to you. We're what you are to them, to you, because you deserve that. And it doesn't mean that we'll be 100% always right in doing that, but I can tell you that you'll have an open line of communication to me. And we do polling, and we take a lot of facts. We've got KPIs in terms of how we're performing to our employees, to our customers. And we take it very seriously that if there's an issue, that we correct that. We correct it systemically, like actually solving the root of the problem, not just addressing it with, soft talk and, taking someone off the ledge. So, you want to pick a company to work with, pick a company that really understands you and wants to support you.
Yeah, and I got to say, man, like, I've never felt anything but supported from you guys. Like, always open lines of communication, fantastic staff there. And the cool thing is, whenever I've gone there, I can feel that even in every single employee that's there, that, they're legitimately excited to be there to move the ball forward. Yeah. Well, man, your facilities are in Flowood, Mississippi, and St. Louis,
and now Knoxville, Tennessee.
Yeah, there you go. You guys aren't going to do Carlsbad?
So, yeah, the square footage is a little expensive out in Carlsbad. We'd rather pass that on to our distributor partners and keep putting it into R&D.
Yeah. I tell surgeons that all the time. I'm like, let's go to St. Louis. What would have been spent in
I lived in Carlsbad. It is a beautiful place, but there's advantages to running companies in middle America towns. There's strong advantages. So doesn't mean we'll not end up acquiring a company in California at some point in the future, but we know who we are. We know what we're good at. We want to keep doing good things for our customers and bringing products out to the market.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for making the trip.
Thank you.
And man, thank you for bringing a great whiskey. That's awesome.
It was better than I anticipated. It was very good.
Right when you opened it, I'm like,
yeah.
This smells like,
the
little cherry, the little chocolate covered cherries with the cream inside.
Yeah,
that's what it smells like, right?
It's similar,
yeah. It was awesome. Balcones is fantastic. Zavation's even better. Man, thanks for coming on, Derek.
Thank you, Chandler. Yep.